We're joined now by Paul Melly. He's a journalist and consulting fellow at the Africa programme at London's Chatham House. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, Paul. Firstly, the deadline is fast approaching. Are you expecting a military intervention by ECOWAS?
I think at this stage we genuinely don't know, because part of the ECOWAS package is also financial and trade sanctions, and they are already biting very hard because Niger is a landlocked country. Most of its trade with the outside world passes through Nigeria and Benin, which are ECOWAS states and taking part in the sanctions. The borders have been closed. Nigeria's stopped electricity supply. We've seen power cuts. We've seen already a rise in the price of key consumer goods in Niamey, the Nigerian capital. So they may wait to see whether these sanctions really start to bite and put pressure on before either going ahead or deciding finally exactly what to do about the military action. And of course, the political complications as well.
And Paul, just talk to us a little bit more about how regional powers are reacting. Opposition leaders in Nigeria urging restraint, Algeria saying it's categorically against a military intervention.
Well, although the government leaders, the presidents of the ECOWAS states, have firmly committed themselves to military action, as you say, there's quite a lot of division within some member states. So we're seeing opposition politicians in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Senegal, raising serious questions about this. And of course, Algeria, which is not a member of ECOWAS, but has a lot of influence in the Sahel, is also saying it's opposed to military action. But the question that will then be posed to those people who are opposed to military action is, what is the best way of bringing about some sort of resolution of this situation? Because so far, the negotiations haven't got very far. ECOWAS sent a delegation at the end of last week. They got no further than the airport. The junta weren't even prepared to talk to them. So it's a very uncertain situation at the moment.
And what do you make of the response from former colonial power France? Paris saying it supports efforts to overturn the coup, but hasn't said whether that backing will include military support.
Well, France is in a very difficult position. Generally, across the West African region, and particularly in Francophone countries, there's quite a lot of resentment towards France, particularly in the cities and particularly among young people. And over the last year or so, the French government has been trying to, shall we say, soften the public profile of its presence in Western Africa to try and defuse these tensions. And the French government is very well aware that if it was seen to be playing a sort of leading military role in some sort of intervention in Niger, then that would be viewed by a lot of people as a throwback to the colonial era. It would generate quite a lot of resentment. So the French stance is really to line up behind ECOWAS, because ECOWAS is the official regional bloc. And whether the French would provide any kind of tacit support to ECOWAS is not being said. France is very firmly just reiterating that it backs ECOWAS as the sort of legitimate bloc to take decisions about this.
And Paul, you've pointed out that opinion is divided within Niger itself about whether or not to support the coup. How would you describe the reaction domestically to what is happening there?
Well, in the immediate aftermath of the coup, we saw demonstrations, quite a number of demonstrations in support of President Bazoum. That's to say, the official head of state who's currently being detained by the junta. Then over the subsequent days, we saw protests in Niamey in support of the putschists. But we have also seen reports and indeed visual confirmation of protests elsewhere, for example, in Tawa, which is an important Nigerian city, in support of President Bazoum again. So clearly there are differences. And if you look at the results of the last election, although Bazoum won by a clear margin, opposition forces got more than 40% of the vote. So opinion probably is divided. It's, of course, impossible to measure it scientifically with opinion polls in the present circumstances. But how people feel about the coup may also be a bit different from how they feel about the prospect of an intervention. So you may get some people who, very much opposed to the coup, want the restoration of constitutional order and Bazoum back in power, but would be opposed to military intervention. So it's a complex picture.
Paul, thank you so much for your time with us. That is Paul Melly, journalist and consulting fellow at the Africa programme at London's Chatham House. Thank you so much.